In this teacher story, we will meet a teacher named Ms. Dewey, who has had a very dramatic year working in a low SES school. With a very rough start holding a heavy bias on her students and their lives, we will listen to her reasons, changes, and thoughts, as well as getting the perspective from her students. When I first started my job, I thought to myself, what in the world did I get myself into? I knew that this world I was teaching in was nothing like the one I knew. I thought their home experience couldn't be overcome by a teacher. A teacher is limited on what they can do with a student. Their home life is the largest influence, and a teacher can ensure success of a poor minority student. Their academic performances are always low, and there was nothing I could do to change that. Their discipline and manners were terrible. The kids were just so frustrating. I would walk into my class every day and think to myself, this was going to be a bad day, just like all the rest of them. Kids came into the room talking loudly, causing problems the moment they walked in, while they pushed and shoved each other through the door. They constantly were disruptive, and when I gave them an assignment, only half of them would do it. The other kids who thought they didn't have to do it would just bother everybody else who was actually trying to learn. Students have the right to fail, but they don't have the right to bother others. I wrote a lot of office referrals. If they didn't care or want to be there, then I didn't care and I didn't want them there. I wasn't going to waste my time teaching learning strategies or creating fun lessons or applying critical thinking in my class. What was the point? I couldn't teach these kids anything. There was something that I could do for them.
I know I'm not a good student. I've been retained twice. I can't read real well, so I don't ever do my work in class. I normally just goof off so no one will notice. Most teachers don't care about me.
My mom works at night, so I get to do whatever I want. I talk on the phone a lot after school or hang out with my friends. I hardly ever do my homework. Why would I do homework when I can watch MTV? I'm failing most of my classes, I always do, but my mom's too busy to care.
It's just me and my dad. My dad says I shouldn't worry about school because my focus should be on the car shop and where he works at. I'm guaranteed a job there when I turn 16, so I don't really worry about schoolwork or homework. It's better than being at school anyways. I always get in trouble there for being what my principal calls a behavior problem. She just doesn't like me. She says I have anger issues. Before I even walk in the classroom, I'm already in trouble. She saw my records and already knew how she would treat me. Anytime I talk to someone in class or ask for help, all I hear from her is, "Shh, be quiet." Don't ask her for help, and don't think about asking a friend. According to her, you should be able to find all the answers in the book, and it should be done quietly.
Miss Dewey was capitalized boring. All we ever did was bookwork. She normally had a list of assignments for our books on the board every morning when we walked in, and that was all we did all day. Quiet bookwork. It was just, gosh, so frustrating. I don't think she cares about anyone. She just came to work to get a paycheck.
If it isn't silent with students reading and doing bookwork, she ain't happy. She always gives bookwork, and how can I do the work if I can't read the words? She gets mad when I don't do what I'm told. Complete the assignments, and I'm not allowed to talk or ask other students for help. Miss D gave me more choices if the lessons or assignment had a lot of reading. She'd let me work with friends, or let me think of a choice that had worked for me. It was cool to have the responsibility, and that she listened. For the first time, I didn't feel so stupid. We weren't doing bookwork, and she wasn't telling us much either. We talked about lessons more in a group. She asked a lot of questions and actually listened to our stories. She would even laugh at them sometimes. It was actually kind of cool.
The day before winter break, a student, Jocelyn, came up to me. She had never really tried to complete any of her work and was always behind in class, never really showed any effort before. She asked me if there was anything that she could do to pass, and I asked her why all of a sudden she was wanting to do better. I didn't think that any of my students cared about their grades or learning. She told me that she had been trying, but she had a hard time getting through all the bookwork because she didn't understand everything she read. She said she was afraid to ask me for help because she said I always told them to be quiet. She said that she didn't want to get in trouble, so she just stayed quiet and did what she could, but that she really didn't want to fail. I took the winter break to reflect. I thought about me and the way that I had been teaching the students, and I realized that I hadn't been a very helpful teacher. I didn't give the students opportunities because I didn't think I could teach them, but I realized that I haven't even tried after talking to Jocelyn. My kids were failing not because they were dumb, but because I hadn't given them a chance. If the one student, Jocelyn, wanted to do better and showed effort, that must have meant that they all would, or at least that they could, something that I hadn't thought of before. After the break, I decided quiet bookwork wasn't the way for these students, and their report cards solidified that idea since most of my class was failing. I needed to do something else. I knew that there had to be a better way. Many of the students had difficulty reading, so I used a lot of literature groups and had them discuss the reading to build their understanding. Groups were a big component in my class. It was a way to get the kids talking about their learning, and they really enjoyed it. I also made goals with each student as a way to keep them and me on track. We worked as a team to create a short-term goal they could achieve, and each day we talked about their progress and what they needed to do to reach it. I always encouraged them and letting them know what they were doing well at along the way. Feedback was important for them. This way they knew what they were doing right, and so they could keep doing it. I found the more talks we had, the more choices they had in the lessons, and the more groups were being used, the better they were doing, and really, the better I felt at the end of the day. The thing that helped me the most was when I started listening to my students. Jocelyn taught me the importance of that. I asked them questions. They weren't like me, so I needed to get to know them to know how to teach them. It allowed them to have a voice in the classroom, and they had stories to share to enhance the lessons. The more we talked, the better their behavior was, and the more I enjoyed my job. I realized shortly after the change in my teaching style and my own personal views of the students, and especially after my talk with Jocelyn, that my students were learning. I had overcome the influence of their home, and my students were making significant gains in their grades, as well as their concepts learned. They started talking about their learning, they'd become resilient, and their learning was becoming relevant. I saw that even though these kids weren't handed the best deal of cards, that it didn't mean they weren't good students and didn't want to learn. They just needed me to give them the chance. It took a student to teach me a pretty important lesson in my own career, and to show me a better way. I come from a family of dropouts. No one has finished school in my family. My older brothers and sisters are already working in fast food joints. One day I had an argument with my brother John. We were watching Grey's Anatomy, and I told him I wanted to be a doctor, and he laughed at me and told me doctors don't fail their classes, and that I was going to be like all the rest of my family, and end up working in a store somewhere. A week later, when we got our report cards and John saw that I was failing, he laughed and said, "I told you were too dumb to be a doctor." I got really mad and I knew I could do better, but when I was in class I couldn't ask my teacher for help because she always got irritated. She gave bookwork and we weren't allowed to ask any questions. It was really hard when I didn't understand something. So one day I thought, what the heck, I'm going to ask her if there's anything else I can do to make my grades better. Even if I can't become a doctor, I just wanted to prove my stupid brother wrong. She asked why I waited so long, and I told her I was afraid to ask her for help because I didn't think she cared. And I thought when I saw that crazy look in her face that I did something wrong, but instead she started asking me questions. She asked what I liked to do, what I wish class was like, why I thought talking to my friends was important, and did I think that my friends in class wanted to learn. Weird stuff, but I answered and I was honest. And I guess she listened, because after winter break she was teaching us a lot of stuff, and we weren't using our books as much either. The best part is I'm not failing anymore. Now when I come to work, I walk into the class with a smile and know that I'm going to have a great day and learn something amazing about some unique individuals. I leave the day knowing that they are more confident in doing a great job, and I feel more confident, and maybe even like I'm doing a great job. This teacher took one look at her students and chalked it up to a failure. And because she did that, her students felt helpless and like they didn't matter. The students were failing and frustrated, and it took one student to show Miss Dewey that there was another way, and that she didn't have to be frustrated with her students either, because they did want to learn. So before making an assumption, look at the facts. Look at what can be done to improve the situation. Can a teacher's efficacy level affect the efficacy of her students? Will a student work harder if they feel like their student cares about them and listens? Are there strategies that can increase the success rate of an at-risk student? And what can a teacher do to make the transition to a teacher with high efficacy? How do you rate yourself? And what are you going to do differently in your classroom to increase the success rate of your students?